Hi, I'm Michelle Sinkevitz Ferguson from Greenberg and Sinkevitz. Sorry that we're a few minutes late again this time, but you're not really an attorney if you're not running from courtroom to courtroom a few minutes late for everything. So we're just trying to keep in touch with that. Thank you for joining us tonight. Tonight we're going to be talking about co-parenting in the time of Corona, and I'll turn it over to Stephanie.
Hi, everybody. I am Stephanie Greenberg, Michelle's business partner. Thank you for joining us so much tonight. Before we even start really diving into the co-parenting issues, I just wanted to give a brief update on what actually happened today with Governor Pritzker. So the governor extended Illinois' stay-at-home order to May 30th. On top of that, everyone is now required to wear a mask if you'll be in public and within 6 feet of someone who is not a resident of your household. So this includes going into grocery stores or anywhere else indoors that you might be in close quarters with other individuals. Keep in mind too that this applies to anyone over 2 years old. So even if you have a child that is 2 years or older, they are required to wear a face mask. I have an almost 3-year-old, and I know she would probably rip it off immediately. So I think this is going to be a little bit hard to enforce, but that's what this new order is saying. And then the governor has now also allowed certain businesses to reopen, such as some small retail shops, clothing stores, so that they can take both online orders and phone orders. And then they'll allow curbside pickup of those items. There were a couple of other things today too that were placed in the order, but I think those were the most pertinent things and things that I wanted to mention tonight. I also wanted to just recap what we discussed last week during our live stream. If you were unable to attend, we did talk about the stay-at-home order in greater detail last week, and how that applies to the court system in Cook County and other collar counties in Illinois, and then the impact that's having on cases right now. So if you did miss it last week and you want to watch and obtain that information, you could find that video on our Facebook page, our Instagram TV page, and also on our YouTube channel. And then all the live streams we're doing from now on will also be posted on those sites, so you can go back and watch those as well. So diving into the topic tonight with co-parenting, leaders from the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers have released 7 guidelines for co-parenting during this COVID-19 pandemic. So we've taken them and sort of applied them to what we're seeing, and we'll discuss what's going on in both Illinois and the country as a whole. So the first guideline is just to be healthy. So everyone should really comply with all of the CDC guidelines, as well as your local and state guidelines. So you shouldn't just be doing that yourself. You should be modeling this and modeling good behavior for your children. So just to sort of go over the CDC guidelines quickly so that everyone is aware of what they currently are. Of course, there's intensive hand washing. So everybody should be washing their hands for at least 20 seconds with warm water and soap. And you should also be teaching and showing your children how to do this, especially if they're on the younger side. And then just wiping down surfaces and other objects that are frequently touched. This can include even, groceries that you bring in or have delivered. Maintaining social distancing. So staying at least 6 feet away from other people that don't reside in your household. And now obviously wearing a mask as well if you're in that situation. So keep yourself informed, make sure you're getting accurate information directly from the CDC or other reliable media sources. Don't base your information on Facebook or other social media outlets. There's a lot of incorrect information out there, and you want to make sure you're following the right guidelines. So when it comes to co-parenting, if these things, being healthy and showing your kids how to be healthy, helping them wash their hands and doing some of these other things, in particular, social distancing, if those aren't being followed, the other parent could potentially complain that you're not appropriately protecting your children. And if they took you to court, specifically about not maintaining social distancing, congregating with other people too closely without wearing a face mask. That could really have severe repercussions on your relationship with your child. So you want to make sure you're following these things very closely.
And we actually forgot the most important part of our program is the theme throughout all of our programs is wine and divorce. So if you are enjoying wine tonight, make sure to do a little cheers to us. Number 2, be mindful. Be honest but appropriate with your children about what's going on. Maintain a calm attitude and convey to your children that you believe everything will return to normal in time, because we do believe that, right? Don't make careless comments about the pandemic in front of your children that could cause unnecessary fear. Also, don't expose them to endless media coverage, and that's probably just good advice for all of us. It's advice I've been trying to take. I've been watching the news less, reading the news less, and that's helped me a lot. Encourage your children to ask questions so that they may express their concerns and answer them truthfully as possible. A good example is my nephew, who is 4, can't really possibly understand what's going on. But my sister has said to him when he asks, where's Auntie, who's his favorite, or where's Grandma and Grandpa, she has told him there's a virus, so everybody has to stay inside for a while. And he's like, oh, okay. So I think you can convey to your children more than you think you can, but also be cognizant of your own children, your children the best, and also cognizant of displaying too much fear, because you definitely don't want your children to be fearful. If you don't do this, or if you expose them to too much media coverage or too much fear, the other parent could complain either to the court or via motion, and you don't want to be getting into a situation where this is coming up in court. So just be very cognizant of all of this. Number 3, and we talked about this last week, is be compliant with your orders. Be compliant with your custody agreement. The stay-at-home order makes it clear that children are to be exchanged per the court order. So it's considered essential travel. It's also important to note that regular parenting time schedules should be followed. So even though school kind of feels like it's out, it's not summer parenting time, it's not holiday parenting time, it's the regular parenting schedule. That being said, if you and the other parent can come to agreements, you guys can always modify whether there's a pandemic or not. So that's definitely something you can do if you can't stick to the regular schedule. It's also important to note that Illinois is not the only state that's doing this. Other states such as Texas and North Carolina have also clarified these types of things. If you don't follow the court orders, or the other parent doesn't follow the court orders, it could mean having an emergency in court. The other parent may be given makeup time for the time they missed, and you just don't want to be in a situation where you're in an emergency hearing, even if it is remote, in court. It could subject you to sanctions or other consequences, such as losing parenting time, and you definitely don't want that. There may be some exceptions, and if you think you fall into one of these exceptions, don't just act blindly, talk to one of us. So are you ill? Is the other parent ill? Is the child ill? Are either one of the parents or any of the children susceptible or have a compromised immune system? If any of these things are occurring, please talk to us or talk to your attorney if you're not local to see what your options are and what you should be doing. You may be seeing some things in the news about how parents who are in the healthcare industry are losing custody of their children. That's a little bit of sensationalism. They're not technically losing custody, they're losing temporary parenting time, which is still very serious. So if you're in that type of situation where you're in the healthcare profession or you're the other parent is, talk to us as well.
So the next point is just to be creative. Obviously, things are changing and will continue to change as a result of this pandemic. So, you can't take your kids on a plane right now, or you shouldn't, I should say, to the park, to museums, to movies. Essentially, you can't do a lot of the things that you would have done with them prior to this happening. So, how you spend your time with your kids, your relationship with them, that's all sort of evolving as this goes on. Additionally, some parents may lose their job as a result of this pandemic. They may have reduced pay. They might be furloughed. So these things can all affect parenting time and also payments for child support and contribution to child-related expenses. Likewise, some parents will be required to work more if they're in an essential role, particularly in the healthcare field, kind of like what Michelle was just discussing. So nurses, doctors, other healthcare professionals. So if there is a parent, particularly who's required to work more right now, and not able to see the child pursuant to their regular parenting time schedule, try to encourage closeness with them. You can do that in a lot of ways. Have them read the child a book. There's a lot of online games people can play with their children. There's FaceTime, there's Skype. Of course, there's the regular old telephone call. So try to keep them in the loop, try to keep them involved. If you don't do this and you just kind of cut them out of the picture, the court could really find that parent unreasonable. They'll see that parent is unwilling to work with the parent who was required to work more during this pandemic. And that can, like Michelle was just talking about, can really affect parenting time, which you don't want that to happen. Sort of delving into people that are, working in the healthcare field and cases that we're seeing right now. There was a fireman in another state, so not Illinois, but his ex-wife took him to court seeking possession of their child while this pandemic is going on, and essentially asking for him to have no parenting time right now due to the nature of his job. The court in that case denied the ex-wife's request, and they said unless dad actually contracts COVID, he has every right to see his child pursuant to their custody judgment. So in that case, they were a pretty strict follower of the court order, the custody judgment. And, they didn't really listen to wife's argument that he's in this field where he could perhaps contract COVID. They just said, unless that actually happens, he should still be able to see his child. So the next factor I want to cover is just being transparent. So be honest and upfront with your other, the co-parent about, suspected or confirmed exposure to the virus. Try to agree on what steps each of you are going to take to protect your child from exposure. There are some parents who might still be taking public transportation. There are some parents who might think taking their child to the grocery store is okay, while the other parent might think those things are not okay. And each parent has their own reasons for believing what they do, but it's really important to have that discussion and get on the same page about what you believe is appropriate for your child and what's not. If you don't have that discussion, that's probably going to cause problems down the road. It's also really important for parents to inform one another immediately if either yourself or your child is exhibiting any symptoms of the virus. Not only do you not want to exchange your child if your child is exhibiting symptoms or if you're exhibiting the symptoms, but the other parent has a right to just know if their child is sick. If this isn't followed, there can be, repercussions for not informing the other parent of a child becoming ill. In custody judgments or allocation judgments, sometimes this language is actually already in there that a parent must immediately inform the other of a child becoming ill. Especially in a circumstance like this, I think even if it's not in your custody judgment, you really need to tell the other parent right away what's going on. And then if somebody exposes the child to the virus, whether that's knowingly or negligently, that can affect their parenting time and really their decision-making authority if the other parent takes them to court over it. The court could potentially see this as endangerment of a child and take parenting time away from the parent who might not be, practicing social distancing or putting their child in harm's way in some way. So, this is just a really important point, and later we'll kind of discuss some ways to handle these things without just running into court right away over them as well.
The next thing is be generous. This is not the time to be counting minutes, hours, even days. So if a parent loses parenting time, provide makeup time. Family law judges really do expect reasonable behavior, especially right now when there's such serious things going on. And you don't want it to be a situation where, now or later on, the judge finds out that you weren't being reasonable and that you're inflexible, and it could affect your parenting time in the future. So certainly act as reasonable and flexible as you can, because that'll only help you. As I said before, if that's not followed, you may be seen as unreasonable. The other person may be seen as unreasonable if they're doing that. And the court will likely order the missed parenting time anyway, so might as well just do it. Number 7, be understanding. If the other parent's income is affected by the virus, if they've lost their job, if they've lost hours, anything like that, they should continue to the best of their ability to pay child support to the extent they can, or you have to pay to the extent you can. But if you really can't, pay as much as possible. And then file a motion to modify, reach out to us. I think the judges are still going to be pretty strict on filing those motions to modify. We see pre-COVID a lot of situations where someone loses their job and they just stop paying, and then they get into a lot of trouble with the rearrages. So just make sure that if you're not able to pay, that you're getting in there and getting that motion on file. The parent who's receiving the payments should be as accommodating as possible under these challenging and temporary circumstances. Although this pandemic poses unique challenges for everyone, it's also an opportunity for parents to work together to focus on what's the best for their child or children. Children respond to their environment, and the better job parents do remaining calm, working together, and keeping their children's best interests in mind, the better the children will respond to the situation. So just keep that at the forefront. I know it could be frustrating when it's hard to communicate about parenting time, or you're not getting all the child support they're used to, but just know that this is temporary, and know that if the two of you can work together, it'll be better for your children.
So to go over, another interesting case that we've seen, again, this was not in Illinois, but we're seeing all different decisions all across the country, all across different courthouses. But there was an emergency room doctor whose ex-husband took her to court seeking temporary sole possession of their daughter due to the nature of mom's job as an emergency room physician. In that case, the court actually granted the dad's request, saying that mom should not have possession of the child due to at this time, due to the nature of her job. The mom commented that she felt that she was forced to either quit her job, which she felt very passionate about. She's obviously helping people in a tremendous way during this time, or continue working and then not be able to see her daughter until, none of us really know when this is going to be over. So it was a really, difficult decision for her to make personally on what she had to do. And then an interesting point just to consider with this is, if these two parties had still been married, the court would not be able to, interfere and make any decision about who could see their child and when. So, everybody has different feelings about maybe what the courts should or should not be doing during this time. But it's interesting to see how the different courthouses are handling the situation. And as you could see from the previous case I mentioned, and then this case, they're all doing something different. So it's really a case-by-case situation. And then there's options other than litigating these issues. So if there are co-parenting issues during this pandemic, you do have options aside from going straight to court. There are 3 that I'm going to mention. The first being mediation. We at Greenberg and Sienkiewicz right now are offering 3 hours of mediation and then a memorandum of understanding for a $600 flat fee. We cannot be your mediator if we've represented one of the parties at any point. Other than that, we can. But whether, we're your mediator or you reach out to somebody else. Mediation can be a great tool where you and your co-parent can sit down and have a discussion and come to an agreement mutually, as opposed to having the court step in, who really doesn't know anything about your family, and making a decision for you. The next course of action would be a guardian ad litem or child representative. So you might already have somebody like this involved in your case, and this is an attorney who's really representing your children's best interests. So if there are parenting issues, I would reach out to your GAL or your child rep before proceeding to court. They can speak with both of you. They could speak with your child or children if necessary, and help you come to a resolution. If you don't have a GAL or child rep in your case, but you feel like you might like one or need one, talk to your attorney about it and see if that might be appropriate at this time. And then the final thing I'm going to mention is a parenting coordinator. So this is somebody who, if there is a parenting dispute, they will work with both parents to try to come to an agreement. If the parents are still unable to reach an agreement, the parenting coordinator can actually make a decision for you. So sometimes this is helpful when the parents in certain circumstances just can't reach an agreement for whatever reason that may be. So there are a few options that are great, especially right now, to maybe attempt first before going into court, depending on the circumstances of your case.
So as we said last week, and we'll continue to say, is we're taking questions. So whether you send them to us right now or ahead of time, we got a few ahead of time and they're all kind of similar. So the big question is social distancing guidelines. What if you're following it, but the other parent isn't? So such as going to the park, bringing them around other people who don't live in the home with them. What are your options? So the first thing I would suggest is talking to them. I'm assuming for anybody who has sent us a message or an email about this, that's not a viable option. But if it is a viable option, do that first. The second step is to suggest mediation on the issue. This is a great option to keep you out of court and to help resolve the issue, kind of like Stephanie was just discussing. The last option is if they're really not taking it seriously, and you're really concerned about the safety of your child and anyone that your child may come in contact with, is to file a motion in court on it. So as we were just discussing before, some pretty serious things can happen, such as losing parenting time or decision-making authority. Even if it's just temporary, no one wants to have to not be able to see their children. So certainly that's an option if it's pretty extreme. In that situation, it's important to think about going into court and additionally proving that this is occurring. So a lot of times these are he said, she said type situations, and the court always kind of focuses on the credibility of the parties, which becomes even more difficult as we're dealing with remote procedures. So if you have a question about this, just reach out to us and we can kind of guide you through what the best case scenario for your situation would be. So in conclusion, this COVID-19 pandemic is unprecedented. None of us have really dealt with anything like this, the courts included. As we talked about last week, the court is coming out with new guidelines all the time. Co-parenting is difficult. It's even more difficult and confusing now. Reach out to us with any questions about co-parenting, divorce, or other family-related issues. We'll continue to keep you updated as the courts changed their procedures and other family law type issues. We're all in this together. On Monday, we'll be live streaming about tips for working from home. So if you have any tips about working from home and what you've been doing, please send them to us ahead of time and we'll discuss them. I think it'll be an interesting perspective, both myself and Stephanie and our associate, Cassandra. So definitely tune in. Next Thursday, we'll also be we were kind of talking about there's different things you can file motions on. We're going to be talking about different issues that might come up during COVID-19 that you might want to go into court over. So definitely tune in. And again, if you have any questions ahead of time, just let us know. So thank you for joining us tonight. I'm going to check right now, see if we have any questions. I don't think we had any that came in, but certainly if you have any along the way, just reach out to us and we're happy to answer them either on the program or if you'd rather keep it between us, that's fine. We, of course, keep all people who ask us questions anonymous. So thank you again for joining us and we'll see you on Monday.